Love Your Kitchen, Designing the Heart of the Home, proudly sponsored by Blum, the podcast where we explore the art of crafting your dream kitchen. I'm your host, Faye Newman, a freelance kitchen designer with a passion for creating spaces that truly reflect the heart of the home. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Love Your Kitchen podcast. As ever, thank you very much for joining me. So today's conversation is going to be how to design the perfect kitchen dresser for both practicality and style. So this is a popular part of a kitchen now. It's something that is a way to really enhance your kitchen design. There's amazing features and things that you can include now. It can be for storage purposes, it can be as almost like a bar setup, it can be a breakfast station, it could be whatever you need it to be, for it to work perfectly for your design. Because there are so many options to choose, different design considerations and configurations to think about from an internal aspect. Of course, it's one of the most used cabinets within a kitchen design. And also there's so many different sort of material choices and things that you can, incorporate into your cabinets now that can really, from a functional perspective, elevate your design, but also look as beautiful as well. So I'm really excited to go through all of these points for you, and I'll also show you some design examples as well, so you can see, if you're watching, you can see different references of what I'm speaking about. By the end of this episode, you will master the art of your kitchen dresser, from choosing the perfect style choices to seamlessly, integrating that into your space so it works perfectly for you. We'll unlock the secrets to optimize storage solutions within a kitchen dresser as well, because I know that's always so important. Or I find with my freelance sort of, clients, I always get asked to optimize storage and how to turn, a simple cabinet like that at a set size into a really workable space for you. And finally, you will learn how to add those finer details and design sort of flourishes into those cabinets so that you can make sure that you're building or creating a kitchen dresser that is perfect for you, and it just shows off a bit of your personality as well. I think you can be quite fun with this part of your kitchen, so it's really exciting to go through that with you. This will be with smart lighting choices, beautiful different interior finishes, to make sure that your kitchen dresser is very unique to you. So I'm very excited. So I think the best place to start, and I know is one of just the most asked questions in general, is how can I design a kitchen dresser for both practicality and style? So of course you want it to look beautiful, but you've got to make sure that it actually works for your space as well. So the first point I would say to this is to understand what you need from that cupboard. So what needs to be stored? Do you want it to be a working cupboard? So do you want to be in that cupboard making whatever you want to make? Or is it a case of it's predominantly for storage, but equally you still want it to look nice on the inside, but it's almost acting as like a pantry. So you go in, get your goods, leave. Or it might be a case of, it's more of an occasion. So you've got your bar section there. Whatever it is, just really think about, okay, what exactly do I need to store in there? And it might be a case of this might be your main storage element from a food storage perspective, hiding appliances. It might all need to go in this one cupboard, and that's fine as well. We might need to consider a larder if that is the case, but equally if we, a dresser and a drawer pack underneath or something like that, again, it might need to work for multiple reasons, which is fine as well. It's just identifying what's needed from it. Then ask yourself, what is the best configuration for your kitchen design? So is it a case of it's better to have almost like standalone dressers, away from the busy cooking area, of the kitchen. So therefore you can go, get what you need to, and then bring it back. Is it a case of you want it to be sort of attached onto your kitchen design in a dresser format, maybe with drawers underneath, as I've mentioned? Is it a case of you need them to be larder cabinets? Again, do you want that actually adjoined onto the kitchen, or do you want it slightly separate? Whatever it might be, it's figuring out how that would be best configured for your kitchen design. So if you're looking for a dresser onto the worktop, that's where you've got a cupboard and it sits onto a worktop. That's what's called a dresser. And as standard, the dressers come at 300mm deep, which is the same depth as your wall cabinets. They come with a 20mm void at the back usually. So again, it's literally an elongated wall cabinet. That's sort of as standard usually what they come as. You can alter the depth of your cabinets dependent on what supplier you're going for. If you're looking to have that as a working cupboard, like for appliances and things like that, normally the standard size is to go for 450mm deep, and that's purely just to allow for the 20mm void, an 18mm back panel, and then your appliances, but equally you might need more dependent on how big they are. Is it a case of you like the look of a dresser? If you're going for a more sort of like traditional style kitchen, dressers work beautifully. Do you want two hinge doors? Do you want bifold doors that open out? If it's a case of you're going back to that cabinet a lot, or you're inside that cabinet, like working within it, do you want hinge doors? You probably don't. You want to keep them nice and open with your bifolds. Just sort of, find the best sort of configuration for you. It might even be a case of you love the look of a dresser, but equally where it's situated, like in between your bank of sort of tall cabinets, it needs to be a larder cabinet. So I've worked on a design before where it's a timeless design. So even though this was a good few years ago now, it still looks as beautiful and in keeping with sort of the timeless nature of styles of kitchens now. So what we had to think about in that design is we had tower cabinets either side. There was only one space to have sort of larder cabinetry for it to not look really like up and down. We did incorporate dressers elsewhere, but for this specific one section, we were looking at potentially doing large cabinets either side, and then drawers at the bottom, and then doing a dresser cabinet. But we just thought it just looked too bitty to try and do that. So rather than making it work from making it into a dresser and then seeing the thickness of worktop, so even if you make that dresser cabinet and you've made it the same depth as your larder cabinets either side, you'll still see a thickness of worktop underneath. And because detail was so important for this beautiful design, and rightly so, it just looked too clunky. So we just had a conversation, and because we were working with a bespoke supplier, what we could do is make the sort of the rail at the bottom of their in-frame door larger to accommodate the thickness of that worktop, and then have a worktop in the inside. So actually when you opened that cupboard and it was a bifold configuration, you can keep those doors open. It's really flush looking from the outside. It's got drawers at the bottom, but equally it still has served the purpose that client needs, and it integrates beautifully within the design. Something to note, if you are doing a timeless kitchen, what's quite nice is doing either different heights and levels or different depths. So what we've done for this particular dresser cabinet is actually brought the dresser cabinet out by 50mm. So again, when you see the beautiful big cornice at the top, it just adds another little definition in and a different design consideration, and we've added that in small parts sort of around the kitchen. So again, it just all works, pretty seamlessly, and it's all just more considered. And it also just makes that cabinet stand out a little bit more. And because it was for like a drink station, it just makes it look a little bit more elevated and different to the actual kitchen. So those are a few things to think about. It might be a case of you've got a freestanding dresser that maybe you can paint in the same colour as your existing kitchen. I've had that before when I've worked with clients and they've had, you know, a bank of dresser cabinets on the one side, and they were like, this works perfectly for everything that we need. Can we just sand that down and repaint that in the same colour as the cabinetry on the other side? If you are doing that, what you can do is, if you order an actual door sample, is you can take that door sample into a, you know, maybe like Dulux or wherever you want to go from a paint perspective, and you can actually get it scanned. So it's the exact colour codes that you need in order for it to match your kitchen. That to me is the best way of doing it, because then it's an exact match. But equally, you know, you might be able to get sort of like the RAB colour codes, you know, from your kitchen supplier as well. But again, that might look really great, or even do that in a different colour as well. Like you could, you know, upcycle a dresser that you've already got and maybe do the interior of the kitchen colour and then keep the exterior in another funky sort of bold colour that, you know, would work really well as well. It's an area, as I said, to add lots of personality. It might be a case of as well where you want to go for more of a traditional looking dresser, where you've got a single dresser and then you've got a drawer at the bottom which sits on top of the worktop, and then you've got your cabinets underneath. Usually if you're doing this sort of setup, you've got your standard sort of 600mm cabinets at the bottom, and then as I mentioned, your dressers are usually 300, 320, but again, they can be made deeper. Something I will note, if you are looking to go down the sort of the slimmer dresser route, is just make sure, so say if you're displaying sort of tableware or a dinner set, just make sure that your biggest plate can fit in there, because even though it's 300mm deep, you've got to think about, as I mentioned, the 20mm void and the 80mm thickness of material on the back. Just a little top tip from me there. Now let's think about the actual doors. So I've touched on this briefly, but think about how that door is going to open and where the placement of that dresser is going to be in the room. Naturally, if it's out of the busy cooking area and you literally just go there to get your dry goods, if it's a pantry, you can just have it on a hinge, grab what you need and then take it back to your main cooking area. If it's a case of you're going for beautiful glazed sort of, you know, dresser section, again, hinges would work really well for that, because you're not using that cabinet all the time. If it's a case of you maybe want to go down more of a contemporary route, or maybe it's a case of it's the main, you're having larder cabinets, that's like the main, you know, space for if you're hiding like your appliances, if you're hiding, you know, away lots of different things and you want everything hidden. An amazing mechanism to use would be what's called a pocket door. So you've probably seen these on TikTok. So they sit as usual doors, and then when you press them, they open out and then they fit back into the thickness or the depth of that cabinet. So usually the door sticks out a little bit, so that you can pull it back and then it sits nicely, you know, back in front of the cupboard. If you are doing this, you've just got to think that a little bit is needed from the interior in order for that pocket door to, you know, sit inside itself and go back into the cabinet. So usually this is 80 to 100mm, dependent on which sort of mechanism you're using. The sponsor of the show, Blum, they have a really reliable mechanism called Ravago. Some of them can be hit and miss, but if you go and invest in a good mechanism like Blum, they will stand the test of time, and any issues, they can always help. We've got a great example of this which featured on the show recently when I spoke to Sophia from Solar Kitchens. They had a kitchen design which was the Gustavian style, so a really quite a timeless look for a Scandinavian kitchen. But basically they were working with an architect and she just wanted everything hidden. She didn't want any of her appliances on show. All of her storage she wanted sort of built in full height doors, really clean lines, lots of detail on the doors, but she wanted it to be really sort of, you know, I'd say flat, but not flat, you know, really sophisticated and beautiful from there. And what they did was they had 3 big larder cabinets at the back of that design that you could just push open, the 2 doors, and they all sat back as a pocket door system. So therefore, when that client is using that space, they can use the appliances and use everything, and then they can put, pull the doors all back together, and then they've got that beautiful seamless look that they were after. So you can keep all those doors open. So the pocket door systems work really well for any working sort of cupboards like that. If it's a case of you're going for more of a traditional looking kitchen, a timeless kitchen, bifold doors work really well. So this is where you have 4 doors if it opens 2 ways, and they have a hinge in the middle, and they open so that there's a triangle. They're almost like in a triangular shape either side, and then you've got your opening there into your cupboard. This can be full height if you want it to be, or it can be on a dresser, which is usually where it's most popular. So it sits on top of the worktop, you open it out, and again, you can keep those doors open. Yes, it does take up space because you've got to think about the 2 door thicknesses and then the mechanism and the angle that they've opened at. But if you're going for a metre, 1200 ml, or even a 900 ml cabinet, you're still going to get quite a bit of storage within that space. If you're going any less than that, it can get a bit difficult. If you're going for a single hinged cabinet, so say if it's to the left or to the right, it's not double opening, 600 ml would be, or 500 ml would be, a big enough cabinet to have those bifolds on, because it's half of the 1000 and half of the 12. So again, that could work really nicely for you. Also, as well, as I mentioned, you can just go hinged. Maybe it's a case of you don't like the look of lots of doors, so having the line going down of lots of doors opening. It might be that you don't want to interfere with any of the storage capacity within that cabinet as well. So the pocket doors, as I mentioned, you've got to take at least, I'd probably say 100 ml each side. Some mechanisms might be different. And then for the bifolds, although it's not actually taking space inside of the cabinet, it might just be a case of you don't want anything sort of in the way, and it's still taking up a little bit of space to have those doors and how they open. So if that is the case, then the hinged option is also a great choice as well. Another great point and why the hinged option is so popular is also if you want to incorporate a spice rack. So naturally, they look just gorgeous when you open a cabinet and you can just see a beautiful, spice rack, maybe painted the same colour as the kitchen cabinet. That's really popular now. Or, in a beautiful wood tone that marries up beautifully with the rest of the kitchen. It just, again, is another design feature that looks great. And might be the reason why you do go for hinged, especially if it's like a pantry setup. That's where the spice sort of racks are most prevalent. Something to think about if you are adding a spice rack on is it does reduce your shelves, because you've got to think about, say, 150 ml at least, or 120 ml, I would say, of the actual depth of the spice racks needs to sit inside of that cabinet. So although your shelves are usually set back slightly to allow for your hinges, they will need to just be reduced more, and the designer will have to let the cabinet manufacturer know, how big that spice rack is, in order to then, have your shelving sort of off the back of that. So something to note from there. Also, it might be a case of you want to incorporate some glazed sections as well. Naturally, if it's glazed, I would do that as hinged personally. But I'm sure you can get pocket door systems out there that incorporates, glass cabinetry as well. If it's a case of you're going for more of a timeless dresser, clear glass is usually really popular, or you can go for your reeded. If you're going for more of a contemporary, like, you can get the beautiful sort of steel framed, really thin frame, and then you can have like tinted glass, which is almost like a brownie colour. So if you're going for like a beautiful quite natural tones within the space, that looks really nice. Or like you can have a blackened version, just to again add another design element to that space. And it might be a case if you've got beautiful elements and items to store behind those, so you want them on show as well. So that would just be something to think about from a door perspective. So looking also at the style now, and how to position this cabinet within the full scheme of the design. If you're going for a timeless sort of shaker style kitchen, as I mentioned before when I spoke about the example of the sort of the dresser slash larder cabinet with a step out, features like that look amazing, and design considerations and details look so nice when it comes to, you know, more of a traditional range like that. So things to think about for that would be the changing of the depths. So say if you've got as I said, like a standalone few sections of cabinets that you want to have dressers on, whether they're glazed, you know, bifolds, whatever it might be. Look at the depths of that. Like, could you make those cabinets slightly deeper so you've still got a lovely thickness of worktop going around the sides and around and across the front? Also, if it's standalone, like, can you add sort of, you know, pilasters or posts on the end? Is it a case of you can continue sort of your molded plinth around as well? That's always a beautiful design feature to add on any sort of freestanding built-in furniture in maybe another part of the house. I've got a great example of this, which is called the Harborne Project, which is on my website, but it's also on, we'll put it on the screen now for you so you can just see how beautiful those standalone dressers are. What we did with this particular design is we had a specific space to use, which was on a sloping roof. So naturally we had to be mindful of the overall height of that space. So we went for tall height furniture on the one side of the room with additional cabinets above. And then in the slope section, we went for medium. So again, that works well with the concept that I mentioned to you about going for, you know, if it's a traditional kitchen, going for different heights and levels. And then we still incorporated the large cornice at the top of the dressers. We did it so that the base cabinets were slightly deeper, and that the dressers were sort of 450, 480 mil deep, just to allow for their breakfast station that they wanted in there. And then also they also wanted a, you know, just a storage dresser as well. But what we did is, rather than having those dressers sort of up against the pillar on the one side, we actually centralized it and made it look like a freestanding piece of furniture, and then incorporating the molded plinths along the bottom just imitates that, and it just shows that, because you can see the plinth on, you know, both sides of it, and there's a big enough gap either side. And then the client that I was working with on this project, what they did was they added towel hooks on the one side, which again was a design feature that actually we hadn't spoken about, but equally it allowed space and, you know, creativity in order to do that. And these things aren't, you know, expensive to add from like a molded plinth perspective. It is just good design. Like, you could do this with any shaker, whether you're going for, you know, your top premium in-frame bespoke kitchens with lots of, you know, detail on the doors, you know, to sort of, if you're going for like your vinyl wraps, your foil wrap doors, or your painted doors, like lay-on doors, you know, it doesn't add more to the cost, these design considerations that we're thinking about. Maybe, you know, an extra length of plinth, but again, it just makes it look a lot more luxurious, which was prevalent throughout the whole of the Harborne design. It was really important that those design details were matched, and rightly so. For now, a contemporary kitchen, because I think sometimes when you say kitchen dresser, you think of maybe your grandparents' Welsh dresser that they had standing in maybe their living room or in their kitchen, and it might have like all of their, you know, some left like food overspill in there, or it might be a case of they've got, you know, a massive dinner set that you might inherit at some stage. But that's usually what you think of. So therefore you think of traditional shaker style kitchens, but that's not always the case. Like, you can go for, you know, dresser cabinets even in a contemporary kitchen. When you're going for a contemporary kitchen, usually you want as little interruption on the doors as possible. So say if you are going for like a larger cabinet or a dresser, usually you don't want to have, you know, a dresser door and then a base cabinet underneath, or have it where it sits onto the worktop and then you have the cabinets underneath. Like, there's too many horizontals in that in order to create a really seamless and, you know, minimal aesthetic, which works well and lends itself to the more contemporary, handleless look. What normally happens is you like to go for full height doors, nice and wide as you can, and go for pocket door systems like we mentioned. That's all fixed inside so that you can use everything. What we're seeing now is similar to Solar Kitchen's example, is to have actually like your oven towers and all of your appliances actually hidden away. And that is a really popular choice now, just in general, for kitchens. And even though appliances have come such a long way, and from a colour perspective, they're not just black with loads of stainless steel on. There's lots of different trims that you can add to it. Mirrored effect, different elements to really make that look beautiful within a contemporary kitchen. It just gives you another design dimension to have everything hidden. And it might be a case of, it won't be like your ovens and things like that. It'll probably be like your integrated microwave, your coffee machine, that sort of thing. Having that all hidden away to act as a pantry section or your breakfast station just works really well for contemporary kitchens. It might be a case of you want to go for a fusion between the two styles. So you don't want to go down the die-hard, no horizontal lines route, and you don't want everything to be super minimal, but equally you don't want to go for the large cornices, like the timeless nature of a shaker kitchen with like the routed out central panel, things like that. You might just want an in-between. And I find with the sort of the in-between, which can be maybe like plywood kitchens or like your mid-century sort of kitchen styles where you can add pops of colour, work really beautifully. Or you might want to go for a kitchen that has a really small frame around the outside. So it almost is a shaker, but it's not as deep as a shaker. So it's almost like that lovely fusion between the two. Different ways that you can approach dressers in this style of kitchen. You could go for, there's a beautiful example from Pluck Kitchens, who I've had on the show before, who are just amazing at introducing colour within a space. Like, that is what they're known for, and their schemes look amazing. When you say you've got pale pink, green, and then maybe like a yellow in a space, you think it sounds awful, but actually when you see it, it looks amazing. But what they do a lot for their dressers and like their larder cabinets is they have, if you go for like a reeded glass, for instance, they've got one in their showroom where you can see a really deep colour, like internal, for their dressers. And then they've got, the reeded glass at the front, surrounded by or positioned in a sort of a medium toned wooden kitchen. And it's just about being playful and seeing how far you can take your design, and make those dressers like really stand out. So that would work really well if it's mainly like a display. They also do some really lovely examples of larder cabinets that act as a pantry, but they've still got zones of colour on in the inside. So you might have a paler colour at the top, then you might have internal drawers that are in like a turquoisey colour. We've got an amazing example to show you. And then you've got drawers at the bottom, different configurations, but they're all in different colours. And again, it just adds, it'll be a centerpiece. Like if you're walking into that space, you'll be like, oh, like to your friend or maybe your partner, be like, open that cupboard. And then they open it, and then you can see all this amazing design features that's gone beyond just the frontals of the cabinetry. So that's really popular. I've also got a fusion design example to show you, which is Burbage, their Otto range, painted in both charcoal and plaster. And again, they've got these reeded dressers which work so beautifully to sort of to the left of their tower cabinets, or where their some larger cabinets are. So again, works beautifully, and you can just see how it just adds a different texture and different dimension to the kitchen space. Also, open dressers are really popular as well. So these are dressers that don't have a base. They usually have like a pilaster on the sides, panels, T&G back panel usually, and then cornice at the top, but it's just open. Those can be great as well if you want open shelving, but you want it to be a little bit more enclosed or in keeping, within the space. Something else that's really important would be lighting. And again, lighting is one of those things that unfortunately I still feel gets overlooked in just, normal day-to-day kitchen designs. If you're going for like your bespoke, normally there's a massive section on sort of lighting. But even like, especially in like your mainstream, like if you're going into for a kitchen design appointment in your mainstream dealers, lighting is just like, okay, so we've got a 5 meter lighting reel that can be put here, here, and here. Like there's not much conversation about it, but it's so, so, so important, especially in a highly functioning cupboard like a kitchen dresser. So things to think about to improve the practicality of this would be firstly incorporating recessed lighting profiles either horizontally on your shelves, or you can add them vertically, either routed out into the side of the cupboards, fitted at the back of the cupboards, or sometimes you can have them fitted at the front of the cupboards but facing everything that's on the inside. But it's just personal preference. Personally, I think they need to be nice and discreet. That would be my go-to for them. Also as well, when you're opening your doors, is there a wireless sort of sensor at the top that when you sort of open it, they can detect movement, so therefore they know that someone's going inside of that cupboard. So say if you've got your hands full of everything and you want to get into sort of one side of your dresser, and you've only got one hand spare, if you can open it and then it senses that the light's on, you then don't have to think, oh, I have to reach and like turn a switch on inside of that cabinet as well. And they're fairly inexpensive. Like it doesn't have to be where everything's, connected up. So you've got, 5,000 light switches, putting on all of these amazing lights, which of course with, a company that can help you with that would be amazing. But if you are just thinking about it for yourself, a wireless sort of, or a movement detector at the top of your cabinet. These wireless connectors are fairly inexpensive to buy, and all they are is they're fixed at where the door opening is at the top of your dresser cabinet. So if you fix it at the top of there, usually it has like two sort of movement detectors, so if the door's on it, they can see that there's nothing moving in front of it, and then when you open it, that's when they can see movement, more light, and then that's where the lights are automatically coming on from there. So something to note. One company I will recommend for lighting, and they've been on the show before, is a company called Sensio. So they do a really nice sort of discreet light profile called Adorn, which actually fits perfectly behind any shelving. So say if you've got 18mm shelves in your dresser cupboard, you could fix this sort of almost like a C-shape profile behind the back of your shelf, and it emits light at the top and the bottom. And it from a vertical perspective, you could have those on all your shelves and it could work out really well for you. It means as well, even though there's the investment of actually buying, that sort of profile, you're not having to pay for your fitter to router out anything within that cupboard. So again, from a cost saving perspective, it should come across more cost effective. They also do a range called Beam, which is not horizontal, it's vertical, and it sits in the corners or at the back of your dresser. And they're really discreet, which again, I think lighting needs to be really. You don't want to see personally a whopping big, surface mounted profile in your cabinets. It's nice to make sure that it's been designed correctly, that it's nice and integrated into the space. So this is why these work really well. They're fixed into the corners, and then it illuminates the light from the back of the cabinet towards you. So it's perfect for task lights or anything like that. So even if it's a pantry section, you can literally go in, see what you've got, because you've got to think when you're going into a cabinet, especially like with large doors, when you're walking into it and your whole body is in front of that cabinet, you're not allowing any sort of light to go into that space essentially. If you've got a light position sort of at the back of you, it can sometimes still be quite difficult, especially at the back of those larger cabinets or dresser cabinets, to see actually what you've got. So that's why, again, lights from a task perspective work so well. And especially if you're using this cabinet as a working station, maybe you've got your microwave, your breakfast station in there, and you're, making your cup of tea there in the morning. You want to make sure that, again, you can see what you're doing. What you can also do is, when I mentioned about surface mounted, that's usually a sort of, if you imagine a 3 metre strip of material, it's got metal on the sides, and then at the bottom of it, it has like a dimmable sort of perspex essentially, and then the lighting channel that uses the lighting channel to emit light into your space. So it means that you have a thin strip, LED strip, that gets fixed into these channels, and then that's how they get positioned within your cupboard. So if you're still with me, because I know that's quite technical, if you go for a surface mounted section like that, sometimes you can still go for those horizontally in your shelves, like underneath your shelves, but you can hide the front of your shelf with a bigger thickness of material. So if you're going down the the 18mm panel route for your shelves and the way, your actual cabinet, if you're using the carcass material for your shelving as well, which is standard practice, I would say, sort of throughout the kitchen industry. See if they can just make you off, a small strip to actually fit in front of the shelves. So one, they look bigger, and two, it hides your lighting channel at the back. Another top tip that looks more expensive, but actually the cost of those carcass or cabinetry sort of strips will be, fairly inexpensive. The last point I want to make on the actual, looking and finding the right style and, design choices for your kitchen dressers, dependent on the overall scheme of the room, is actually what materials you choose for the cabinet interior. So there's lots of different options for this. So naturally, it would be out of your cabinet material, the same colour. I would personally, if you're going for a contemporary kitchen, maybe go for like a darker interior. I think that always looks really nice. Or if you're going for a taupe, make sure it's matching the board colour on the inside is matching the sort of the door colour as well. That always looks really nice. If it's timeless, it might be the same colour, or it might be a case of, maybe it's a wood veneer, which looks beautiful, or it might be a board that's used, or a company that's used to make, big laminate boards, is called Egger. Really popular. A lot of kitchen, companies use this for the interior of their cabinets, but they do a lot of like wood effects as well. So it's still sort of MFC based, but then you have a laminate on the top of that. And usually, dependent on the cabinet supplier, you've got a 2mm thick edge going around that. So again, it's really durable. So think about, how that will look. If you are going down the wooden route, make sure you're looking at maybe internal drawers that are of a similar wood tone to the interior. Check to see, the spice racks, for instance, that you're looking to add on. Make sure that's all the same wooden tone. Normally, they're like, an oak. Even if you're going for an Egger board or a laminated board, usually, like if you go for like an oak effect, it all marries up quite nicely. Or the kitchen supplier, or where you're purchasing the kitchen from, might be able to recommend, the ones that are closest to the internal drawer boxes and things that you want to use. So again, that's a really good point to make. So you just make sure that you're, looking at how you actually want the interior colour of that space to look as well. We touched on the beautiful pluck kitchen dressers. So again, they've been really brave with this attribute and making that a real key feature. Also, what you can do is, if you're going for a beautiful, charcoal kitchen like I'm sat in today, for the dressers that we've got here, what Burbage have done from a design perspective is actually incorporated the charcoal inside of the cabinet, with also T&G panelling at the back. So again, it just works really well and suits the overall, timeless aesthetic of the whole kitchen scheme, which works well. And again, it's an added detail that you will only see when you go into that cabinet, but equally, it just looks beautiful. Something to think about: if you are going for a painted interior, is just be mindful if you've got like loads of cookbooks, or you've got lots of, you know, storage elements happening within that space, and you're sliding them out all the time. Something to think about is, you know, if it is painted, especially in a dark colour, you will see, you know, those scratches on those shelves. So just be mindful and make sure that you're happy with that. If it's a case of it's more of a decorative cupboard, again, it works quite nicely. Or see if the kitchen supplier has any advice on how to make that more durable for you, maybe an extra coat or an extra finish of something, or see what base their primer is, so that if something does lift off from a paint perspective, you can see the undertone underneath. But yeah, just something to mention. I know that when a colleague of mine was designing their kitchen, that was something that they loved, the look of like the colour drenched cabinet or larder cabinet, but they were just like, when the kids are in there pulling everything out, it's just going to get wrecked. So again, for them, they just couldn't go for that, unfortunately, from a design perspective, but still looked amazing and still works beautifully for them. So that's the end of today's episode. I hope it's been really helpful for you and you've taken a few design snippets that you can introduce into your upcoming kitchen design. I'd love to hear what they are or what's really resonated with you. So please do get in touch on our social channels, which is at Love Your Kitchen Podcast, or comment below in the videos so that I can see how this podcast is impacting your kitchen design journey. If it's a case of you feel like you need extra help with your design, I'm a freelance kitchen and bedroom designer, so I would love to help you with your projects. What you can do is book a call with me through my website, which is www.fayenewmandesign.com, and then we can discuss your project from there. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video today. If you have liked what we have spoken about, why not like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also, what you can do is click on the notification bell to keep yourself notified of all the new content to come.